ScreenBeam.com for more information on some of the technologies, solutions, services, and broader thought leadership that we're going to be bringing up today, and also for more episodes of Collaborative Tech Talk, which you can also find on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Just hit that subscribe button, and you'll have a full catalog of previous conversations, as well as notifications when we drop new ones. So on today's episode of the show, we are excited to announce that ScreenBeam has a brand new B2B partnership with one of the very best in collaborative digital signage and content management. As of May 6th, 2021, ScreenBeam is partnering with Carousel Digital Signage to deliver seamless digital signage integrations into classrooms, both K through 12 and higher education, as well as to meeting spaces across verticals to bring active content to idle spaces. And we'll dig more into that partnership today, but at the core of this partnership is really the meat of our conversation at a very high thought leadership level, which is, why are these solutions even needed in the first place? Why do these various spaces need this kind of digital signage and content management solution? Especially as in-person instruction and in-office work returns at scale in the United States this summer, how people relate to their physical spaces has shifted, and obviously so have our tools to meet people where they're at. These two use cases, again, education and sort of the corporate office workspace, will have major financial and operational ramifications on their respective organizations. So with our podcast today, we're using the news of our ScreenBeam and Carousel partnership to explore in-person content needs in education, K through 12 and higher ed, as well as in office settings, and why solving these needs is so critical, as well as where ScreenBeam and Carousel can add their value to this ecosystem. So I'm pleased to welcome our two guests today for insights. I'm joined by Mike Ehlenberger, Vice President and General Manager at ScreenBeam, and Eric Henry, President of Carousel Digital Signage. Mike, Eric, great to have you both on. How are y'all doing?
Great to be here.
Yeah, doing well today.
Real pleasure getting to chat with both of you. Thank you so much for joining us. So let's jump right in. There's a lot to unpack. We've got about 30 minutes to get through all of it. Again, the core vision for the partnership is for ScreenBeam and Carousel to leverage each other's technologies to keep meeting spaces and classrooms alive with digital signage content while screens are idle or not in their main phase of use. So let's unpack the core needs here and their impact on businesses and education spaces. I guess just to start things off, in general, why do you foresee digital signage being such a critical component of facilities operations, especially as spaces reopen at scale? Would you say COVID has a major hand to play in the reshaping of the utility of digital signage here? Give us your thoughts.
Well, I would say for sure, digital signage has really become an important, critical piece of what ScreenBeam brings to the market. Being connected to displays all throughout organizations, all throughout school systems. Those displays are often idle, and they can certainly be used to share information, and that's very important. COVID is an important factor as well because there's more communication happening throughout all these types of organizations regarding safety protocols, or various information. So this has been a feature in the past that our customers really appreciated about ScreenBeam. And now with this terrific partnership with Carousel, we're going to be able to bring this enhanced experience to our mutual customers. I think they're going to be absolutely delighted.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of follow along on that, I think the reality is that in this past year, we've rethought a lot of things, whether that is in our personal lives, whether that is in how we approach our businesses and our schools, and really looking at what is the objective that we have, what is the value of the spaces that we gather in, and so there's this opportunity for corporate environments and for education environments to really think through how we leverage not just our physical space, but what we're actually trying to accomplish there. And so I think a lot of what I'll probably share with today and what I've been stirred to is, what does engagement look like? And so yes, there's all the real practical things that we talk about in terms of how do I navigate the space, where do I go, what are the protocols for us to use a meeting space or a classroom, but ultimately it comes down to how do we engage and keep people engaged in these environments, because ultimately what we're trying to do is make sure that we're successful. So whether it's students being successful in their education or a business being successful, and that's really what, as we started talking with one another about how can we bring our solutions together to help people be more successful, whether they're a student in the classroom or whether they're somebody in a corporate environment, collaborating in a meeting or just being more connected to the organization that they're part of. And so that's really, they're the same types of challenges that were there before COVID, but I think COVID in this whole year that we've been through together is given us a time to pause and rethink and start thinking a little bit deeper about why we use these technologies, right? Like they're cool, but at the end of the day, there's got to be a purpose. And so that's what I'm excited about.
I want to follow up now sort of per the different market segments we're really talking about today. So let's look at the corporate environment. How do you see the corporate environment continuing to change into 2021 and moving forward? Are we going to see similar layouts, similar designs, or major shifts in layouts and designs, I guess, compared to the already present shifts we've seen to open workspaces, more collaborative workspaces, and where does digital signage fit into that changing ecosystem?
Yeah, I would say that we see a lot of change happening already with our customers as they're preparing to re-enter and have their employees re-entering the workplaces. There's going to be more meeting spaces, and so traditional meeting spaces are being refit today to become safer meeting spaces. But then, of course, as we go into this hybrid working mode, you're going to have less people coming into the office to do work in cubicle and office spaces, and more people coming in because they need to do group work or collaborate or meet together. So that's going to be a real major shift, and we're seeing that happen today. And I think companies are reconfiguring their real estate. They're looking at areas in their offices where they can do stand-up meetings. They're looking at how they can better use huddle spaces to enable 2 or more people to kind of get together and work together. And again, it's really about how is the office going to be used? How is the classroom going to be used? And how can we facilitate that with this technology?
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of that, I think we're looking at every investment that we make, how are we maximizing that investment? And so the excitement is, a ScreenBeam device enables collaboration. Why not use that device to communicate all the things we need to communicate when we're not collaborating? It just makes a ton of sense. And so I think in a corporate environment, as we're looking at communicating our core values, even the fact that you don't see all of your people. I know in my organization, what I enjoy is seeing the faces of the people on our little corporate news feed and being reminded of our core values and those types of things. We've already got these devices we can leverage. And so it's just creating, it's being more sensitive to the new environment as well. And so very functional, but also just the environment that you're in can be, and we're all in places where we're just inundated with all kinds of messages, but we can really tailor the message to reinforce our brand, right? And our brand is our culture. And so I think that's a really important piece. As corporations are coming back, they want to reestablish their culture in a way. And I think that we together can play a role in that. It's not the biggest part of the role, but it's a role.
That is an excellent point, Eric. I mean, it really does come down to people and the experiences that we're able to create and facilitate, in work environments and in learning environments for people, to enable them to be successful. And after all this time in working from home and being out of the office or being out of the classroom, the one thing that people are really looking forward to is actually coming back and working with people. We've started to reopen our office slowly for hybrid working, and honestly, it's been terrific just getting back and just seeing the amount of work that can get done when you're sitting in the same room with somebody and sharing ideas, versus being kind of tethered to a web camera. So it's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then to intersect the other main market we're talking about today, education, but the 2 segments there, K through 12 as well as higher ed, thoughts there? Are you foreseeing that classrooms in both segments are going to change dramatically as we sort of enter this? Do we continue hybridized? Do we continue in-person or remote? Sort of uncertainty, nebulousness. Are we going to see the same kind of mass instruction within those in-person spaces? Where does digital signage fit into the needs of education spaces moving forward?
So Eric, I'll let you take that one.
Oh, wait, I was waiting for you.
Oh, I know, but
we should hold on and make this one awkward. See who breaks first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We'll set a new record.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what will really happen ultimately in the education space. I think certainly there's a lot of excitement about getting back to in person. I think that we've had heroic things happen within the schools with teachers really trying to figure out how to do distance learning and those types of things, and tech teams trying to solve all kinds of new territories right in the last year. But I think there's a lot of excitement about getting back together. Certainly we'll have to be mindful of how we can do that in a way that is ultimately more flexible, right, and can really adapt to the needs within an environment. And so I don't really, maybe Mike has a better sense of what will actually happen. I don't really know, right, to be honest, even what the fall is going to look like. Higher education is still hoping that the fall will look a lot more normal than it did this last fall. And it looks like we're trending that direction, but we don't totally know. And so I think the key is we're hearing a lot about give us flexibility in these spaces. And that's really what these devices and our signage allow organizations to be, as flexible. Hey, how are we doing these things? Where are we moving classes to? All of those types of things, because it's all digital and because of even the management tools. Like, what are the management tools so that I can move devices around if I need to? Those things are going to be really important in the education space to be highly flexible. And that's more speaking kind of the technical side, but as well, I think, and I keep getting back to this engagement piece, and I know for my own kids, like they want to get plugged in. They want to know what's happening, right? And so I think that's where the signage piece can reinforce and re-engage kids that have been kind of out of the loop now for a while, right? Their whole routine has been sort of disrupted this last year, and I think even just sharing some common experience, as simple as signage. And it's remarkable how many times I've heard that in the last year, where people are saying, I just want the signage to be a thing that is a common experience. And I think that that's going to be a big part of, again, just like in corporate, setting the tone of the culture. I think that signage will also be part of setting a common experience and drawing people to the events that they can now attend again, or celebrating the sports team or the choir or the principal re-engaging their students. There's just so much that can happen, and we'll see. I think that's my honest answer is we'll see. I don't think any of us really know.
Yeah, I think it's really going to be interesting, because right now we're really in hybrid learning. We're not so much in distance learning anymore, and so schools have got different types of ways of dealing with that. Sometimes they'll do kind of A-day, B-day cohorts where students are going in 2 to 3 days a week, and while other students are at home learning from home. And so this sets up a whole new different set of challenges for teachers, because essentially they have 2 classes to teach at the same time. One is the live in-person class, and the other are the students that are remotely attending the classroom. So, ScreenBeam's working really diligently to help solve some of those problems with our product offerings and with Classroom Commander and various pieces. But a lot of it just comes down to communicating, and that's one of the reasons why we really like the concept of what we can do around digital signage and with Carousel, because the kids are excited to come back into class and find out that their favorite items are on the lunch menu that day, and they've been out of class for so long that's something that just really brings a big smile to their face. Yeah. So bringing them back into the community, I think, is important.
Yeah, and I think the other aspect of it too is the reality is this last year has forced a lot more tech into the hands of students, right? And so now there's a huge learning curve, but now you have a level of comfort with all of the latest tools. And so while there was sort of one-to-one initiatives in the past and collaborative sharing to the display in the front of the room and those types of models in the past, I think that's been accelerated because of necessity. And so now I think a lot of school districts are going to have to figure out, okay, boy, students, they've been remote. They're used to having these devices in their hands, whether it be a Chromebook or an iPad or whatever other tablet they might have. And it's awesome that we can also support them, those devices, for collaboration in the classroom. I think that's just going to be a great transition back. kind of bridging the gap of what they were doing remotely with what they used to do in the classroom. Like
yeah, one accelerated really fast. So learning how to contend with all of a sudden every student's got a device. That's going to be a trick for sure.
Definitely. So I guess the flip side of this conversation is what kind of investments are going to be unwise or are going to be, the ones that maybe are a nice little cherry on top but aren't really worth broad mass rollouts or where you should place all your focus. So I'm curious, what digital signage uses do you see as unwise investments or strategies for these spaces as they reopen en masse, and why? What should we avoid?
I'd love to jump on that one because I've seen it. So I'll say what just a quick story. I was talking to a university, and I was literally just talking to another university within the same state. So I'm not going to say what state they happen to be from. But one of the universities, they were sharing with me, hey, we really want to do this digital signage thing, and they were all excited about it, and they were ready to spend some money. And I said, well, why are you deploying digital signage? And they literally said, because the university down the street did it. And I thought, So I paused and said, well, I'm not sure that that's going to lead to a successful digital signage rollout. And so I think the reality is there are lots of different things that you can do that are good investments, but only if you understand why in the world you're doing it in the first place. So so we talk a lot about return on investment. And I like the phrase, especially given the markets that we're in, return on objective. I think we have to very clearly understand what is the objective I'm actually trying to achieve. Is it engaging students in a classroom? Is it creating an environment? Is it trying to drive towards student success? Like, what is the thing I'm actually trying to do? And then start your signage initiative, right? So is it leveraging all of my collaboration spaces? Okay, turning those rectangles into screens, and then what am I putting on those? Because if you don't establish that early on, your signage products or your project's just not going to be successful because you didn't really know why you did it. It used to be that way a lot. Like, we did digital signage because somebody else did digital signage. Now there's much more scrutiny on it, but even still, I would say you clearly have to know who's going to own it. Like, is it each little college within a university, or are the teachers creating it in their classroom? And who's actually creating this content that's going on a screen, and how are we keeping it fresh? Those are all the things we think about. And am I going to get the return on the investment and the objective that I was looking for? And that will lead you to picking the right devices in the right places, because there's lots of ways you can do digital signage. And that's sort of how we've always tried to think about it. And so that's kind of my answer would be, it's not going to be successful if you don't understand why you're doing it. That's ultimately, to me, the ones that I've seen fail. If you understand why, there's several options, and sometimes we're not even the right option for you, and we would be happy to tell you that. I think a lot of times we are, but I want to see success, because it doesn't do me any good if you're not successful.
Very true. Very true. Help us help you, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. We definitely want our customers to be successful, and while we're not a one-size-fits-all solution, we're a one-size-fits-many or one-size-fits-most. I think when you think about what unwise investments might look like, I think, if people are deploying display-only endpoints, just digital signage players, they're essentially taking those displays out of circulation for other uses. And it's very difficult to do that in a classroom or in a meeting room, because now you're contending with multiple inputs on those displays. When you want to shift from, passive mode where digital signage is up and running to active mode where the room is actually being used for meetings or for UC or whatever the room is being used for. So buying just a player-only type of a solution really clamps down on the return you can get on that investment or that objective. But through this integration, and what's really cool about what we're doing is we're bringing a lot of functionality to those displays that are, a lot of the time going to be used for digital signage, but also a lot of the time going to be used for meetings and for collaborations. And so we bring multiple benefits to the end customer, and we make it very seamless. Everything that we do is in the background. So when you walk into a ScreenBeam room and you've got carousel signage running in the background, you can still tell that the display is ready to connect. We provide some information on how to do that, and the user essentially just brings out their device. They use their native wireless display, be it Miracast or AirPlay or Google Cast, and they just start their meeting, and all of a sudden the digital signage just disappears and the meeting starts at that point. And then, of course, when the meeting is over, then the digital signage can come back in and the room is still ready to connect, waiting for the next people to come in. So that's a huge advantage. And, don't invest in hardware that's going to make it more difficult for the users. Invest in solutions that are going to make it just easy for them to walk in and use those facilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd add on to that, make sure you understand the true total cost of ownership, right? Because it's tempting to jump into the lowest price tag on the front end. And if you add one single staff person beyond what you would have had to add, right, to either manage all the devices or create the content, if you added one single person, you will blow the total cost of ownership up. And so I think it's very important to understand, what is the actual investment that I'm making? How much is this going to cost me over time to actually meet my objective? Because that's the problem with things that seem like cheap or easy or free, right? Aren't cheap, easy, or free if you have staff that need to manage those things beyond what it would normally take, right? And those types of things. And so I think that's very important as well. Like every time we jump into like our partnership, just real quickly, is why we like ScreenBeam so much is because of all of the thought they put around managing the device itself, and what are the tools that they give you to control an entire large deployment, because our customers aren't always thinking about that, right? And so that's a really important aspect of making an investment decision.
All right, I want to now highlight the ScreenBeam Carousel partnership a little bit more now that we're in the home stretch here of our live interview. As a unified force, how do you see the ScreenBeam Carousel partnership working to solve some of these missed opportunities that you've been describing, but actually in practice? Walk us through what a deployed solution would actually look like, especially at scale when we're dealing with enterprises with multiple floors, multiple buildings, or campuses with multiple buildings as well.
I think from our perspective, we drive our portfolio largely based on voice of customer. And so we're hyper-focused, of course, on collaboration and wireless presentation. And prior to this partnership with Carousel, we were listening to what our customers needed, but we certainly weren't the experts when it came to digital signage. And so I think it's been very fortuitous to really strike up this partnership and work together where both companies are optimizing their technologies to work well and make it easy for customers. But we're going to learn a lot, and that's really important. We need to keep hearing what the market needs. We need to keep understanding how to help future-proof our customers and to anticipate what their future needs are. And really having this type of a partnership where Carousel is such an expert, such a leader when it comes to making digital signage accessible and easy to scale is a giant benefit for our mutual customers. And we understand that we have a responsibility as our customers entrust their displays, their meeting spaces to ScreenBeam. Essentially, we are that front of room experience for them. So we need to make sure that we don't lock that down, but rather we open it up and help bring them the best in class technologies so they can get the most out of those spaces. Those are large real estate investments, and the displays play a very large role in those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and from a real practical perspective, the technologies are already integrated. And so the deployment itself is actually very straightforward. And so you point to Carousel inside of ScreenBeam. It says, hey, do you want to register 100 players or 1,000 players, which we would call the ScreenBeam devices? And you can, in Carousel, say, yep, all 500 of these ScreenBeams are they're authorized to play Carousel content and get access to it. And what channel of content do you want to play? So you can do it by floor, you can do it by building, however you want to organize your content. And so each ScreenBeam, for lack of a better term, tunes to a channel of Carousel, and you can deliver very customized content to every one of those displays whenever a meeting's not in place. And so you can get up and running with this integration very, very quickly. And so it's pretty exciting. And we've got some things where our dev teams are already talking about the next generation of iterations that we can make to really tighten the overall value and keep enhancing the value of both of our offerings together. So we're pretty excited about that.
Now, following up on some of that, what challenges can come from trying to create consistent messaging and consistent content, as well as all of this needed niche and personalized content that is also becoming more important, especially when we bring up the context of students or employees coming back to their in-person space with that one-to-one technology that maybe they didn't have before. So break that down for us. What are some of the challenges that come from trying to build this out, and how do you work to solve those as a team?
Eric, I'll definitely let you take the first crack at this.
All right. Yeah.
You're the expert.
So some of those challenges for sure are, who in the world owns this content, right? Who's creating it? Where is it landing? And who's ultimately responsible? And so that is, if you look at the whole basis for why we even built Carousel the way that we did over 20 years ago, was to solve that very problem. And so anytime you get to scale, it's easy if it's 5 screens. Anybody can do that, right? Well, I want to put something on this screen over here. But when you start to get to 200 classrooms or 500 devices or across the district, how do you manage that? By building, right, within a school district or even within a university. One of our big universities, they have 285 users, right, creating content. How do you manage content approval workflow? And so that really is the big challenge. And so the great part is I think we've addressed that very well and given everybody a set of tools where I can create one piece of content and it automatically goes across all 1,000 ScreenBeams if that's appropriate. I can also segregate it to say this piece of content in this part of the zone, and we can get all the details later. Obviously, we don't have time for that today, but where does it all go without me having to understand how the network is designed? It's all based on my user role and permissions on whether I get to post to the system or it just needs to go to this place or that place. And so to me, it's all about the content. As far as our deployment between our two companies and how the tech works together, that stuff's on lockdown. I think we got it really tight. And then it gets to, how do we train people really quickly and get them creating content so that it's fresh and engaging and relevant and shows up in the right place? That's the hard part. And I think we've got a really good set of tools. We can get people up to speed pretty quickly on getting that on the screen and getting it off the screen when it's supposed to be done too, with scheduling and those types of things. That's the part that we get pretty excited about. So I think we got some great tools to dive into as people express interest. So.
And that's exactly what our customers have been asking for. And that's why this partnership works so well for us, is that we're able to handle that. We deal with very large deployments, hundreds is very common, thousands is very common. Mm-hmm. And so how do you really enable those customers to have an easy way of managing that content? And by just having a very basic player isn't the solution. Having a great partnership, that is the solution. And, I think Eric made a great point earlier talking about total cost of ownership. When you start to look at some solutions, I think the overhead involved in having to manually manage these solutions can become very costly very quickly. And I think what Carousel has done such a brilliant job of is just making this so accessible and easy, to the point where you can have a university where you have 200 creators and they have the rights to do and publish content into certain players, and that makes all the difference. We see education customers largely doing things by departments, and so you'll have the math department doing one thing or doing grade level content, and so all of these things come into play. How do you really allow all of this, not just content creation, but then control of the distribution to take place without it becoming rocket science or becoming an IT project? And that's what the combined solution does.
Yeah, absolutely. And just real quickly on top of that, we have all kinds of templating and things so that if you need to stay on brand, whether you're a corporate customer or a higher ed customer, everyday people can create this content and stay on brand, which is really important, because if you give people the power to create, usually it looks a little bit ugly unless they're a graphic designer. I'm just going to be honest with you. It's a little rough. And so we try to give a set of tools there too to make it really look polished, even though it's everyday people creating it. So.
Yeah, content is important, but so is consistency. And the end users aren't really going to be able to know the difference when they see something that, hey, guess what, this was sort of user made, so you should keep that in mind. No, they're going to see a final product, and if it looks like the meme, I don't know if you've seen it, of the little clip art frog, and it says graphic design is my passion. I don't know if you've seen that, but yeah. It's a classic. Basically, just if they look at it and say, well, this doesn't look high quality, that doesn't reflect poorly, right? So I think this just goes back to what you were saying, Eric, of just as companies, as higher education institutions look to launch a solution like this at scale, ROO, not ROI, is the big one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Making sure
Absolutely.
that your objective is clear, making sure that you totally understand what are the needs that this digital signage and content management solution is going to fill, and then how can we build a structure that allows us to be flexible and maintain that consistency to meet all of our students' signage needs, collaboration needs, etc. And I think with this partnership, we've got a bright future ahead of us for both of these spaces. And I think on that note, we're going to go ahead and wrap the conversation. I'm sure we'll do some more conversations moving forward as we see the fruits of this partnership bear out. But till then, thank you so much to both of you for breaking down the ScreenBeam Carousel partnership, and more importantly, just laying out why filling these digital signage and content management needs are so important for these two spaces today, especially as people return to their spaces en masse. So thank you again to our two guests, Mike Ehlenberger, Vice President and General Manager at ScreenBeam, and Eric Henry, President of Carousel Digital Signage. Mike, if folks want to find out more about what ScreenBeam is doing in this space, how can they learn more or get in touch?
ScreenBeam.com.
Ooh, I love when it's that easy. Eric, same question to you. How can folks learn more about Carousel and some of the work you're doing in these spaces?
Yeah, carouselsignage.com, and we even have a dedicated Carousel and ScreenBeam partner page that you can kind of dive in on all the details of our integration together. And if you're a tech nerd, we've got some KBs on that stuff as well. So.
Hey, I love it. I love it. All right, thank you so much to both of you. Mike, Eric, it's really been a pleasure.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And thank you everyone for watching another episode of the show today. You've been watching Collaborative Tech Talk, a ScreenBeam podcast. If you like what you heard and want to consume some more content, head to our website, screenbeam.com, or subscribe to Collaborative Tech Talk on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'm your host, Daniel Litwin, the voice of B2B, and we'll catch you next time on